forward.
Well, I knew that she was a state champion in tennis. I knew you were good. My former neighbor, he just packed up and moved. Your old neighbor, Bradley Underwood, told me that both of y'all were real good. So I knew it.
Really, Bradley's down there?
Yep, Bradley just moved. He moved to Davie County. But hey, let's
Aw.
play the intro music. All right. Good Wednesday evening. Going live a few minutes early. It's just the three amigos here tonight. Dina, Jack, myself, talking a little bit of playoff football coming up. We got the seedings happening Saturday, which means that this Thursday, probably a lot of Thursday games, but Friday too would be some big rivalry games in North Carolina. And maybe any other discussions. We'll take your comments here on the NC Preps line. In fact, let me go ahead and put the let's press the button right there. Submit any questions on YouTube, Facebook to Dina, myself. So Dina, Wednesday, which means we're right here, same bat time, same bat channel. But how's things going in your neck of the woods?
Pretty good. Week 7, so we've made it this far. Back in the fall, the week right before the playoffs, selection shows, what I basically call it. It's kind of like March Madness. It's usually the busiest time on our message boards. So guys, gals, go to the message boards and support your team. I'm sure you'll find someone that will either agree with you or disagree. And
you get that right.
This is he's had a fun time with his rankings this year.
Oh, wow. Yeah, no kidding. Hey, before we get on, and Jack, I'll talk to you in a second, so don't go far. We'll talk a little bit of basketball. Dina, before we get too far into this, I wanted to get your thoughts on the UNC basketball hire. I know that obviously you covered the Tar Heels for Rivals, Tar Heel Illustrated, and what you thought. And go ahead, just give us your thoughts. Did they make the right hire? Did they not? How do you feel about it?
Well, it's been a whirlwind last few days. We were actually getting ready to have a football Zoom since Carolina spring practice were going on. Us media, we were set to have 2 Carolina football players on a Zoom, and then we get an email from Steve Kirshner, the Houdini of all media relations and stuff, sends out a email, says Coach Williams has retired. And it was like, whoa, what? So whirlwind, covering, you could see, well, he was asked in the last press conference, he said, I started the season at 70 and now I feel 103. And it looked like all this, everything from the COVID to the transfer portal to all this stuff, looks like it really took a toll on Coach Williams. And, I'm sad because, he's a great ambassador for UNC, college basketball, college sports. He supports every sport at UNC. But you have to respect him. He said it was time for him to move on. And you like to see a coach go when he wants to and not when it gets either too bad or kind of out of control. So you saw him go lead the Dean Smith Center hand in hand with his wife Wanda.
Yep.
It was pretty special. And then a few days later, they hired Hubert Davis, who he has a resume that checks almost all the boxes except being a head coach. But when you look at who he's played under and been associated around, he's been kind of like an underdog his whole life.
Yes, he has.
And Bubba Cunningham, AD at UNC, said he was the right guy for the job. So Tar Heel Nation will have to be behind Hubert. Well, Coach Davis now. So I watched his press conference yesterday, and if you was kind of on the fence, like, oh, I don't know if this is good, if you listen to him and what all he said, you can't help but want this guy to succeed.
Yeah. Agreed. Now, Jack, both Dean and myself were well into our high school and college years. We both saw Hubert Davis as a player, and he was a really, really good player. I mean, he wasn't quite, ACC Player of the Year. He wasn't quite on that first team status, but he was a pretty good player. You think back at those late 80s, early 90s national championship level teams, that 92 team, I think they won the title in 93, but you think of those teams with George Lynch and Eric Montross, a young Eric Montross, right before Jerry Stackhouse and Rasheed came in. Hubert was a really, really good player. Obviously goes on to spend 12 years in the NBA, which is nothing to sneeze at all. But you, Jack, being, considerably younger, and I feel like you've got your finger on the pulse really well of the young up-and-coming generation. What do you think of the hire?
I think to embrace the Carolina tradition, it was a great hire. I mean, I met Hubert Davis one time. I went to the Roy Williams basketball camp when I was 10 or 11, and I met him one time. And now it was a basketball camp for children, so of course he was going to be nice to everybody, but he was just one of the most genuine people that I met that week. And just through all the videos that I've seen, he seems like one of the nicest people. So I think he's going to be great. I think one of the biggest thing is almost a ton of the big-time recruits that Carolina have brought in have been through Hubert. So he's not going to drop off on recruiting. They're still going to bring in tons of talent. So I'm excited to see what he does, and the Carolina people should support him no matter what.
I agree. And, I had met Hubert Davis once, and he was exceptionally nice, as you mentioned. I had dealt with Roy, met Roy a couple times. Roy is who Roy is, kind of that all shucks, dadgum kind of guy. And, he is what you see on TV. Really great guy, and did great for not only Tar Heel Nation, but Kansas. But Dean and I know we're football recruiting guys, but I do kind of somewhat agree with what Jack says, and I don't think this will hurt. In fact, if anything, I think it could potentially help Carolina basketball recruiting as if it needed it anymore, just because, there is somewhat of an age gap from a 70-year-old coach to a 18-year-old player. So I think that this could potentially propel the Tar Heels back into that 1, 2, 3 range versus maybe right now kind of being a top 25 team.
Yeah, and I think obviously Roy Williams, I mean, he's one of the greatest of all time. But this past season, the way, obviously, I'm not trying to diss Roy Williams, but the way that he kind of used the two centers, obviously Walker Kessler transferred, so he wasn't really a fan of that. So I think Hubert, obviously, I don't know what he's going to try to do, but he said he wants Walker Kessler back. So we'll see if that happens.
He'll get him.
Yeah.
DeMarco Dunn and Dontre Styles said, they're still all in and everything. So the first phone call, Hubert, Coach Davis, I'm going to have to be be politically correct and start calling him Coach Davis, not Hubert, is Walker Kessler. So I don't think he would have mentioned that in front of everybody yesterday if he didn't think he had a great chance of bringing Walker back. And, I've seen fans like, oh, no. Kid's 18 years old. You think back when you was 18, what you done probably a lot of people might have done a lot of things that they kind of regret and jumped the handle and done. So if the coaching staff don't have a problem with it, his teammates don't have a problem with it, I don't see any issue with Walker Kessler coming back to UNC if he wants to.
Yeah.
And Armando Baycott tweeted at Walker Kessler the other day and was like, yo, what's up? So I think right now, if he doesn't come back to Carolina, he's going to go to Auburn. That's kind of like the place where if he doesn't come back, that's kind of where he's going to go. But I think Carolina is a great shot, and I think Walker Kessler has a chance to be a superstar at the stretch 4 position. I mean, he can score wherever he wants. I think he's going to be really special. So I hope Carolina can bring him back.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. And sadly, and I think Roy knew it, and a lot of people probably did too. And, it's sad to see him say it. It's sad to see the looks on his face and to hear him. But I think that had a lot to do with him quote him what he said, that, he wasn't the right guy for the job right now. And I'm sure a lot of that kind of went into it. And, I think that this is, again, could be a coaching hire that springs board the Tar Heels up into the elite levels of the national prominence. And I mean today, and of course, when you're talking about the Blue Bloods, obviously Kansas and Kentucky and Duke and Carolina, I mean, they're always going to be among the elites in college basketball. But I think it's safe to say that, right now, Gonzaga and Baylor and some of these other guys are certainly a little bit higher on that pecking order than Carolina and especially Duke. So I think this could be a good move.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, Dina, we're just to kind of give you guys an update. We did start a few minutes early tonight, so it'll probably be a little bit of a short show. The rest of our team, it's still spring break and spring sports season. So Tally's not on, and Brianna has still been playing her season, and Chelsea. So if you guys are watching, we appreciate you getting on, and we certainly miss you tonight. But as I mentioned, this is the rivalry week for the final week of the regular season. Got some big games coming up. Jack, I know big game in your area, and I'll let you go any direction you want in this, but I've seen where Kinston and Washington has moved to Thursday, as is a lot of games now on Thursday. Washington, I think, has a good chance of winning that game or certainly making it competitive. I have a feeling that Kinston's streak of shutting out every opponent going into this game is certainly going to be in jeopardy, because I think you and I both would agree Washington's a pretty tough team.
Yeah, I think it's definitely those two teams definitely in recent history have had kind of a big rivalry in basketball too. I mean, they both have some great athletes that played basketball and that played football. So I'm really excited. I don't think I'm going to be able to make the game. I was hoping if on Friday I may be able to make the game. I don't think I'm going to be able to make the game anymore, but I'll definitely try to watch it. But I mean, that field is going to be filled with athletes, and Kinston trying to hold on to 0 points given up in the regular season. I mean, that is crazy. There you go, Pamlico Tarboro. That is going to be a great game.
Very good game.
Yeah, I think
obviously I think Tarboro's favored.
Yeah.
But I do think that Pamlico will give them a very good run for the money. I mean, I don't consider this a heavy favorite. Probably a significant, but again, I think Pamlico, they're the real deal.
Yeah, I think they'll definitely put up some points on Tarboro. Another game was Jacksonville at Havelock. Jacksonville, another team that has athletes all over the field. Havelock is definitely heavily favored, but I mean, who knows? Jacksonville has a hot game. Havelock has a down game. Who knows? It's at Havelock. That was another game that I caught my eye that was moved to last night. And then obviously my hometown, Richlands, playing Southwest. Hasn't beat them in almost 30 years.
Yeah.
about 30 years. Haven't beat them about 30 years. I don't think it'll be this year, but, we'll see what happens.
Yeah. And I just want to throw out some of the games of the week that I've been tracking. I'll be sending this list over. We'll make sure we get this populated up on the NC Preps website by tomorrow. Grays Creek, 4-1, playing over at Southview. That's a big battle in Fayetteville. It's not necessarily going to have the conference implications in the number one seed for the 3A and 4A, given the two classifications. But nonetheless, that's kind of the big battle of Hope Mills. Another big game with another Hope Mills game that's got a little bit of a family feel to it is Jack Britt, undefeated. Obviously, they knocked off Pinecrest a couple weeks ago. They're going to travel down the road, Highway 401, into Laurinburg to play Richard Bailey. Obviously, Richard Bailey's had tremendous success at Scotland, won 100 games there, won about 100-plus games at Jack Britt as well. So that's going to be a really big game with some very significant playoff implications because that game in and of itself is going to greatly affect whether Pinecrest gets into the playoffs and maybe even if Scotland gets into the playoffs and how that works with these predetermined seeds, or at least these the word I'm looking for, guaranteed seeds for a conference. That would be crazy. Even at 3-0, Richmond's going to go in as the number one seed, or at least a number two seed, depending on if Scotland or if Jack Britt beats Scotland. But that's a huge game, guys.
Yeah, and I think there's gonna, just like there was in basketball, there's gonna be some really good teams that get left out of the playoffs. So it's just gonna, I think this upcoming week is really gonna decide that. So, and another thing is, are they still picking out of the hat for random picks?
To be honest, I'm not 100% sure, even reading the rules, how they're going to do this. So that beats me, to be honest. And I hate to say that I'm uninformed. That's usually not the case. But it's been a rough couple of weeks for me in this preparation for me to move. But, Dina, this reminds me a lot of some days that I was a part of as a coach back in the 90s and 2000s. But, it used to be where you would often have 8-2, 9-1 teams potentially not make the playoffs. I remember in 1995, Concord didn't make the playoffs at 9-1. In 2000, I was on the staff at South Rowan, and we won the conference as a co-champion and still didn't make the playoffs. So it's not necessarily rare air, Dina.
What was it? Draw straws. I know those Friday nights. Things ended up in a three-way tie. So you would see people post on message boards like they've met over here at Harry's gas station, and so-and-so's draw number one, so-and-so draw number two. It's a fun time but I know there's been some awful good teams left out of the playoffs because of picking the wrong straw.
Yeah.
A couple games I wanted to mention. Kings Mountain and Crest. You know what's on the line there. Nothing to explain there. I mean, just
I've thought about going to that game just to see if I could sneak into the locker room and get another one of those really fired up videos.
Coach Edens.
Yeah, from Coach Nick Edens, because he's going to lock the gate behind them when they go in there. But no, I think that's going to be a tremendous game. I've seen Kings Mountain this year. Haven't seen Crest, but I've seen some film of them, and I know that they're exceptional, especially running the ball. So that should be a good game.
The game of the year.
The game of the state, Vance and Huff. I mean, Lord, the athletes out on the field. I mean, you got defending 4A champ against Huff, who is loaded. Got some really talented kids out there. Great coaching staffs there. If Huff has had a lot of talent over the years, but they haven't really took the next step. And this is the time Huff can make a statement and battle Vance there.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, and I think Vance is on a level unto themselves. I mean, I think they're up there, and everybody else is a little step or two behind them. But if anybody can do it, Huff certainly has the roster and the talent, and they got a great coaching staff. So I'm not going to go and say that Vance is going to win it going away because, hey, let's just look a couple weeks ago. Lake Norman took them to the brink for a good period of that game, as they did last year. So I think that you can play with Vance, but you're going to have to play exceptional football. You can't make mistakes. You can't turn the ball.
I expect a tough defensive type battle within a touchdown, maybe go down to the last thing. I mean, I could see somebody winning 21-14, 21-17, something like that. So,
before Matt Jenkins was the head coach at Huff, he was a defensive coordinator at Concord, and a really good one. So, he certainly knows the defensive side of the ball. So I think that'd be a big one. Just to throw off a couple other big games, Wake Forest, they've lost a game now, but they're at Heritage. That's a huge game right there in the Wake Forest city limits. I have to say that Heritage is probably the favorite going into this one, but I think it'll be a back-and-forth close kind of game. Providence and Ardrikale are going at it. Providence, I don't think anybody, even myself, had Providence being 6-0, winning that conference going into this season. But they've certainly, Coach Wes Ward and that entire staff at Providence they've been on fire, and they've won handedly and doing it really with a lot of defense as well.
They've given up 19 points all season.
Yeah. Leesville Road.
A couple more games I'd like to mention, or I'd be run off the 1A board if I don't mention East Surrey and Mount Airy.
Oh, yeah, I was going to get there, but you're right.
In my backyard. Rivalry game, they don't like each other. Anything can happen when those two play. And then you go up there in the mountains, Murphy and Robbinsville.
Oh, gosh. And by the way, we know the
Big Oaks. So a lot of good things on the line. Conference championships, number one seeds, undefeated seasons. So we got it all going on in here in week 7 of the spring season.
The last time Murphy traveled to Big Oaks, I was there in 2018, I believe it was. Great environment for football. Anybody that's never been to Robbinsville should certainly go. Incredible environment. Two of the best teams certainly in 1A. And I think the Mount Airy fans, or at least two or three of them, have taken some exception with me in our rankings this year. But, they'll get a chance to prove it on the field. And you know what? If they win Friday night, they can give you a big "I told you so." So we'll see with that. Couple other games that's got significant. There's a trio of them right here that have significant playoff implications, to where a couple teams that you might think is a shoe-in to make or maybe not make the playoffs could change the entire balance in 4A. And that would be the Porter Ridge, Hickory Ridge game. One of those two teams will probably make it. One will not. Both of them are 4-2, playing incredible good football. But that game could also determine, with these at-large or wild card bids, the winners and losers of this game here. Glenn will travel to East Forsyth. They played each other in the first week of the season in non-conference fashion. They'll go do it again. Glenn won that first game 18-0. East, if you have not been paying attention, East Forsyth has really got things together. And they've got that one conference loss. You think Glenn sitting here at 4-1 is sitting pretty to make the playoffs, but I think if they lose that game Friday night, there's a very good chance they do not even make the playoffs. And then on the flip side, West Forsyth and Davie County. If West wins, they win that conference. But if Davie wins and East Forsyth wins, that just puts everything into a huge little jumbled up mess for the conference. And then you have East and West potentially winning that league. So it's going to be a really kind of a strange deal right there. Those are 4 good teams, and I think only 2 of them, maybe 3, make the playoffs.
That Central Piedmont, it's always, any team can win on a given day. So, you got to bring your A game and great football in that area.
I've been involved either as a player.
And I know you're gonna miss that Central Piedmont.
I will. Whether as a player, a coach, a fan, whatever. I've been involved in that conference since like 1985. I've been around the CPC, and it certainly has been one of the best conferences for football. A couple other big games. South Caldwell going up to Alexander Central. South Caldwell 3-0, 3-1. Huge shout out to Coach Kirkpatrick for that. Orange at Chapel Hill. Asheville going to North Henderson. Asheville has really turned it on lately. Jack, here's one in your neck of the woods. Havelock 6-0 going to Jacksonville 5-1. Is that going to be a ball game?
No, I don't think so. I think Havelock's too good. I've seen both of them. I've seen Jacksonville play in person, and they have the players to hang with Havelock. They just make some dumb mistakes sometimes, and Havelock's the team that you make one dumb mistake and they'll take the game away from you.
I'm looking at that game because there's two UNC signees playing that game. Camaro Edmonds at Havelock and Tamir Brown at Jacksonville. Edmonds got hurt earlier in the year with a bad ankle sprain, and so he played, I believe, a few snaps last week in their big win over Swansboro, I believe. Is that who they played?
Well, I think so.
Scored a touchdown, ran like 3 times for 35 yards. So Coach Wooten slowly trying to bring his thoroughbred back and get him ready. And that says a lot about Camaro. You know, he's already signed with UNC. His future is set, but he could have went like a lot of these other college kids. He could have basically said, "Oh, I'm done."
Yeah,
he wants that ring, and Havelock's got a great chance to get one this year, and he wants to play with his brothers and everything. So I'm looking forward to seeing how those two guys do, and I think Havelock has done really exceptional well without Camaro. It allowed some other guys to get some reps, and so they can just come in waves.
Yeah, I think another big thing is a lot of games that I've watched, Tamir has only touched the ball on offense like 2 to 3 times in the first half. So I think it will be Jacksonville really wants this win, an upset win, if they try to incorporate him more on offense, putting him at quarterback like a wild. I mean, that's where he's made his big plays. They just snap it back to him, and he just runs around and scores a touchdown. So I think it'll be interesting to see how much he touches the ball on offense. Obviously, he's going to Carolina to be a DB, but I think in high school he can make a lot of big plays that will help them if they want to pull off the upset. He needs to make some big plays on offense.
Yeah, I'm with you. Just to list a few other big games, Southwest Guilford is traveling to Davie County. That game has been, not Davie County, Mount Tabor, my bad. That game has been moved to tomorrow. Northern Nash 4-1 and Rocky Mount 5-1. I think this is a very interesting game that I kind of think Northern Nash might be slightly, I don't want to say favored, but if this is not a 50-50 game, it's really close. I think Northern Nash, their defense is superb. I think that they've got enough to make it a true battle with Rocky Mount. But I do think, Rocky Mount is inside our top 20 power rankings. Northern Nash has been right there on that precipice all year, have not forgot about the Knights. So really strong team. South Central at D.H. Conley, Clayton at West Johnston. That game has no championship implications. Cleveland's already took care of that conference. West Rowan at Statesville, that's for the conference championship in the North Piedmont. Obviously, we mentioned that Crest, Kings Mountain. Western Alamance, a team that beat Eastern handedly, they play Northern Guilford, who I think is the second best team really in that mid-Eastern conference or mid-state conference. So that's a game to really look at. Any thoughts on that battle or any of these others I've just mentioned?
Those Alamance schools, and you mentioned it, Western, Eastern, always good. They're always good. They have a long playoff.
Yes.
They go very, very, very deep in the playoff runs, and then everybody knows the history of Northern Guilford and everything. So that conference has always been really, really tough as well, and stuff. But you've mentioned a lot of great games, and it's like that the last weekend of regular season. I think it's planned that way to hype up the end of the season, and playoffs, conference championships on the line, rivalry games. So it's just
Just because I'm yawning doesn't mean I'm tired.
Are you back in school? I mean, are y'all still virtual?
We're back 5 days a week. Everybody's there. It's interesting. It's very interesting.
Well, I just had my second COVID shot, and they say that it's the worst, and I'm already feeling a little tired from it. Hopefully, I'm able to stay upright tomorrow. Moving on to another game. Monday night, we saw Cuthbertson take Charlotte Catholic to the limit. The last 20 seconds of that game was absolutely epic. Catholic prevailed, but they don't get a match or a break. They got 2 4-1 teams going at it Friday night. Marvin Ridge at Catholic. Marvin Ridge always manages to play the Cougars tough. So that's a game I keep an eye out for. I'm not necessarily saying that Catholic's going to lose, because I don't necessarily think they will, but I do think it'd be a great ball game. Watauga 5-0 going down. This is not a conference game, but taking on TC Robertson. TC Robertson is one of the best teams in Western North Carolina. They played a tremendous game against AC Reynolds a couple weeks ago. And I am blanking, and I'm going to have to look it up just because I want to make sure I mention the guy's name. Dina, you don't know the quarterback's name at TC, do you? I got it right here on my – huh?
No, I don't.
I got it right here on my list. He is probably one of the best pure passers I've seen. And I know Brody Whitson. I just want to make sure I mentioned his name, Brody Whitson, the quarterback at TC Robertson. He is having a phenomenal year. I think he might be 5th or 6th in statistical passing leaders in North Carolina, having a great season. So I want to make sure I threw his name out there. St. Paul's at Red Springs. These are 2 phenomenal Robinson County teams. Hertford, speaking of, and we did have a coaching change come about this week also from Robertson County. George Colthart, in the middle of the season, stepped down as the head coach at Fairmont.
Wow.
So that's kind of a tough deal. Anytime you lose a coach during the season, we don't know the circumstances behind it, but they had certainly had a tough year. I know numbers had been really low. So you hope both parties, both the coach and the school, can find a way to bounce back from that. Hertford County, they've got another phenomenal quarterback in Ty Saxby. Not sure if any of you guys had seen that. But they play East Duplin, and Jack, I know you probably know this, and Dina, you too. East Duplin may be the best 2-4 team in the nation.
They are. They play a very hard schedule. It is crazy. I mean, Coach Holly's always going to have his team super fundamental, and the culture at East Duplin. Their teams are always going to play with the best teams, and and in this short season, they don't have. I mean, I went to the Jacksonville games, and they almost beat Jacksonville. And Jacksonville, I mean, when you look at the teams, Jacksonville should have beat them by 40 points. But East Duplin is always going to stay with those top teams. So,
and I think Battle Holly. Well, I mean, Battle Holly is one of the best coaches in the state, and obviously he comes from a pretty good pedigree in his father.
Yeah. I mean, the legacy that he carries down to East Duplin, one of the best football programs, and we know they're going to bounce back after this weird year.
Yes.
I mean, they're going to be back.
I totally concur. 2 other teams, one that's been slightly down at 4-2's down, at least down to their standards, has been Southwest Edgecombe. But they're going to go play a very tough 4-2 Bedingfield team out there in Wilson. 2 really good programs. I think both of them are a little bit better than their 4-2 record. They've all played some tough competition up there, but that's a game to keep an eye on. Another team that's probably way under the radar only because they've only played 3 games due to the COVID protocols is West Stanley. Now West Stanley is without what's his name?
Jordan Poole.
Jordan Poole. One of the best running backs coming into the state this season. Obviously, he moved on. But they're playing Mount Pleasant, who is just absolutely getting after it on both offense and defense. Several shutouts coming into this game. Those two big rivals, very close to one another geographically, right across the Cabarrus Stanley County line, right there, kind of the Battle of the Rocky River. But that's going to be a big game. So I'm looking forward to that one. Any ideas on? I think Mount Pleasant's got to be the favorite, but man, I don't know. West Stanley has just dominated everybody they've played.
It's kind of hard to judge because 3 games. You like to see a bigger sample size. We've got people kind of on the message boards asking all kinds of questions about. Well, in one team in particular is Richmond. If they finish 3-0, or they're 3-0, and are they going to get a high seed? And I'm glad we're not making those decisions.
No kidding. I really am. I'm not sure. Mountain Heritage is another team that's been affected by the protocol. They're 3-1. They're scheduled to go down to Polk County at 4-1. I'm not 100% sure if that game's going. I guess it is. I haven't heard otherwise, but I know that Polk County has been in the COVID protocol. A game that has moved to tomorrow, drawn at East Burke. There's 2 4-2 squads. You want to talk about a program that has really jumped in a hurry, and that's because of head coach Derek Miner. He's kind of like a Donnie Kiefer, Dean, and I don't know how well you know Coach Miner, but he's like Donnie Kiefer in the sense that he's been to several schools. He always seems to go to schools that are struggling, and they always seem to get better immediately under him.
Yeah, I remember Coach Miner when he started at Princeton, and Princeton was really good, and I believe he went to Rockingham. And you don't have to tell me about Coach Kiefer. He won at places that had
impossible.
Yeah. And I don't mean nothing about Andrews, because Andrews has got a great coaching staff right now, and they're doing really good. But Coach Kiefer, he won at Andrews up there in the mountains.
Andrews, East Carteret, St. Paul's, Roanoke.
Mm-hmm.
Win the state championship.
Did you know there used to be a Roanoke High School?
I know there's a Roanoke Rapids High School.
The Roanoke Redskins, by the way.
They merged.
Yep. Gotcha. That school is now South Creek High School. But he was at Roanoke. He was at High Brighton. He was at Central Cabarrus. I know
in South Carolina.
He was at Southwest Guilford. And there's
a lot of places.
Yeah.
But the thing is, he's
Tuscola.
Tuscola. Yeah, that was probably his longest tenured school. I think he was at Tuscola for about 5 years, and that may be the longest he's been at any school. And then to top it off, he goes to Green C. Floyd in South Carolina, which is in Horry County, which may have been one of the bottom tier 1A schools that you just never seen them win consistently. They had a few up and down years, and darn it if he didn't win 2 state championships with them, and that was like Houdini right there.
Mm-hmm.
So can't say enough good things about Donnie Kiefer, one of the best of the best. Moving on in our list, Wallace Rose Hill. Jack, this is in your neck of the woods. 4-2 going to Clinton 6-0. Clinton is the number 3 team in the NC Preps rankings. Clinton's had a few close calls. They've also played a really tough schedule. Wallace has played an extremely tough schedule as well. We all know that that's a tough part of the state. What do you see in this game?
Wallace is really young. I think towards the beginning of the season when they played White Oak, I know they made a few. They were just a young team that made some dumb mistakes, but I think they're ready under the legacy of Wallace. They've kind of straightened themselves up, and I think they're going to be able to play with Clinton. And obviously, Clinton is one of the best teams in the state, but I could definitely see Wallace making it close and possibly pulling off the upset. I mean, you can never count them out. And like you said, Clinton has had a few close games, so I think that'll be a very, very good game.
Yeah. Dina, here's some teams that have kind of, or at least one of the teams I've had some fans from this kind of get after me on our rankings, but Pisgah, they're 5-1. They're traveling over to Brevard. Brevard's been in the semifinals of the 2A the past 2 straight years. They're 4-2, Pisgah 5-1. That should be a big game up there in Transylvania County.
those two teams have really good programs. I'm glad Brevard had a period where they were kind of in decline, and it's good to see
Yes.
them, the Blue Devils, bouncing back and having some success. And Pisgah, what can you say about the Black Bears? I mean, they have a very passionate fan base, and they will follow those Bears as many as they can go. I don't. I mean, they're a great fan base. They love to support their Bears.
Agreed. And Brett Chappell, dear friend, one of the great coaches in the state, one of the best players as well. His senior season in '95 at Rosman would probably go down as one of the best seasons as a running back in statistical in our state history. Jack, I'm going to go back to your neck of the woods. East Carteret, they're 4-1. They're going over to play 5-1 Croatan. Both of these teams, I think, are pretty good, really good in their respective classifications. Do you see East with a chance? I know Croatan's a bigger school, some more players, but I think East is pretty explosive.
Yeah, I think it's kind of two contrasting styles. Croatan lines up. I mean, they have everybody on the field except maybe one wide receiver with their hand in the ground. It's pretty fun to watch, and they run their system to perfection. They're big, they're strong. Their linemen are fast, so they can get up to linebackers. I think they're a really good team. And East Carteret, they have some weapons on the outside, so I think it'll be interesting. I think Croatan will win, but I think there'll be some points on the board.
Yeah, my guy B.J. Frazier, head coach at East Carteret, he was a star there. He played for Donnie Kiefer when he was there, and he was one of the receivers, one of the players that was a significant player for Appalachian when they beat Michigan at the Big House.
Oh, wow.
So, yep. Here is a southwestern part of the 2A. Here's the conference, which I think is far and away the best conference right now in the 2A. That you've got four absolute dynamos of a team that I think would beat anybody else on any given week in 2A, including a Clinton and maybe even a Reedsville. I think they're on that level, and they've been beating up on one another. And unfortunately, I don't think that two of them, maybe three, is going to make the playoffs out of this quartet of teams. But you've got Burns, they're 4-2. They're going to play RS Central, who's 4-2. You've got Chase, 4-2, going to play South Point, who's 4-2. Obviously, you got Shelby in that mix as well. But that's going to be two incredibly – I mean, these might be the two biggest 2A games in the state Friday night.
Crazy stuff there. And that region, tough. Shelby's lost 2 straight games. So when does that happen? I mean,
I think
I can't remember. I know they had a year where they were record wise where the record wasn't very good, but they still went. I think it was the year they lost to West Oaks. I believe West Oaks went on and won the state championship, but I don't know if they lost 2 straight games that year.
Yeah, I think Shelby is going to be okay in playoff seeding because one of their losses was to Kings Mountain, as is Burns, whose loss was to Crest. But if I could see a scenario to where Shelby wins out, Burns beats RS Central, and South Point beats Chase, I could see a scenario to where one of those 3 of those teams could be in a tie for the conference. Maybe one of them is looking on the outside looking in. I'm not sure how that's going to work with the wild card, but I know that those 5 teams are 5 of the best 2A teams in the state, hence the reason all 5 of them are kind of clumped there together in our rankings. So that's a tough one. And another conference that's exceptionally good, maybe the second best or maybe the third best in 2A, is the Central Carolina right there, and you got Oak Grove and North Davidson 5-1, both in the top 10 of the state, going at it Friday night. Those 2 schools are separated by just mere minutes. And then you throw in the fact that Coach Mark Holcomb came from North Davidson. His offensive coordinator and Brian Flynn remained at North Davidson. Holcomb took half the staff with him to Oak Grove. There's a lot of friction between those 2 programs because, it's kind of like a lot of family and friends and, just splitting the community in half. I think that's going to be a heck of a ball game Friday.
Yeah, North Davidson lost, a lot of their kids when they built the Oak Grove school. So, like you said, they're going to be like a Hatfield McCoys there.
It will be. This will be their last official regular season game as 2A schools, by the way. Both of them are moving up to the 3A next year. Bartlett Yancey 4-1. They're going to Reidsville 5-0. I know on paper that looks like it could be a game. I think we all think Reidsville will probably take care of business. But I'll say this, and even I go back to some of my guys that coached at Cummings, they would say that there's no team in that region up there in that northern border area of North Carolina that has more dudes than Bartlett Yancey. And I've been there for a game as well, and they always just seem to have some critters coming off the bus that look really good. So I think that, I think they're going to give Reidsville as good a game as they can. Here's the big game. You mentioned Mount Airy and East Surrey, and that's a huge one. Here's kind of that 1B or 1A, however you want to look at it, or maybe 1C if you lump in Murphy and Robbinsville as the 1A games of the week, is Pine Lake Prep 6-0. They're playing Community School of Davidson, who's 5-1. Both of these teams are kind of sprinkled with some players that have come from some good Charlotte area schools. I know Huff's former quarterback is leading the team at Pine Lake Prep. I think that's going to be a really good game on Friday. Or it may be tomorrow. I have not seen Coach Trotter whether it is coming out to be on Thursday or not, but that's going to be a heck of a ball game.
I bet there's a lot of points scored in that.
I would think that you're right, but you never know. Pine Lake Prep's defense has been legit, as has Community School of Davidson, and the way that both of them kind of took care of business with Mountain Island Charter, who I still think is immensely talented and exceptionally well coached. But you look at the 2A, 3A level schedule that they went out and played, and I think that the aggressiveness of the schedule and maybe just a little bit of lightness in their depth, it kind of caused them some problems. But I think that they would line up and beat 2/3 of the 1A schools on any given night, and probably some 2A schools. So we'll see. And then kind of that other game we mentioned at the top of the program, Tarboro and Pamlico, 4-0, 4-1, squaring off. And Jack, I can't leave out these Eastern North Carolina duos, kind of the battle of both right there, South Side and North Side. Those are two real solid teams. North Side's been pretty good all year, but South Side's kind of snuck in there here the past few weeks with a few big wins.
Yeah, I think they're both two really solid teams that teams just don't really – people don't really look at them as kind of some of the top
Well, they
teams.
don't. And they're exceptionally rural teams. And they kind of they literally have a peninsula between them that Washington sits on two different sides of the sounds on each side of Washington right there. Hence the south side and the north side if you look at the geographics of the county. But those typically are some solid football teams.
Yeah, they usually have a couple of dudes that up there. The football, I think, is really underrated up in that part of the state. People don't give it enough credit. So I think those are two teams that could make some noise in the playoffs.
Yeah, and if you hear any noise coming in, I've got moving going on here in the house, and I've had some kids running in and out. So if for some reason you hear some screaming, just think that everything's okay. Just a couple other games, or really one other game. We talked about Murphy and Robbinsville. There's one other. Again, hey, there's 5 big games in 1A, and this is the final one on my list, guys. But John Holmes, 5-0, going to play Perquimans. Perquimans, and I've seen some tape of them. They are one of the most athletic 1A teams that I've seen. They've got a lot of real good-looking guys, especially on the perimeter, which kind of goes in hand with the kind of speed and play that Holmes has. That should be a big game. Either one of you got any takes on it?
I haven't really seen either of the teams, but I know Holmes is always explosive and fast, and they like to speed the game up. So I know that I know they're really good this year. I haven't seen much on Perquimans, but I know that Holmes is definitely really good. Have you ever heard of
it? Might be a day trip. I think that'd be a little bit more than a day trip.
Yeah, that would probably be like a weekend. That's like an 8. That's very far. Yeah.
Yeah, and one other thing right here.
That's about as far.
And one other thing right here, Terry Grayson came on and he was telling us good evening, but he wanted to let us know that in 2018 Shelby started 1-3.
Well.
And
Hey, I will say, I just saw Jones Sr., who has the longest, I think they have the longest losing streak in North Carolina, right? You did an article on that.
Yes.
They actually have a JV team this year, which is like crazy. Like, they never have a JV team. They don't have enough kids. But their JV team just won a game, which is like, that's crazy.
Well, I mean, but
They beat Oakland.
I was at the Jones Senior Kinston game 2 years ago, and that Jones has an exceptional amount of talent on that team. They're always a talented team.
Oh, yeah.
And it was 14-8 or 14-6 going into the fourth quarter before Kinston initially finally won 40-6. But, you know, it just kind of shows you that Jones has tremendous talent. They just are lacking in numbers. And once those guys wear down and you can use your depth to prevail, it's kind of a downhill slope for them.
Yeah, there was a year, a couple years ago. I think they went to the state championship.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I think that's just an example of when they have a year where they have a few more numbers and they can get some depth in, that they can be definitely dangerous. It's just some years. I mean, I think one year they had like 18 kids or something like that. I don't know. Sometimes it's kind of bad, but yeah, they definitely have some dudes on the team.
Yeah, no kidding. And, you know, I think John Davis coached them a couple different times, and he had some great runs there. They've had some really good – they've always had talent. But so that's about it. But there you go, guys. I mean, that kind of wraps us up. Looking at 8:45. We've been on here about an hour talking about these games of the week, guys. Any other real things you want to go over before we call it a night?
I got something. Just wanted to say – like in the past couple months, North Carolina's lost two coaching legends. Coach Jim Odo at Charlotte Catholic and Tom Brown at Maiden. I know both of them.
And Phil Padgett as well.
Excuse me?
And Phil Padgett as well.
Oh, yeah. I've met Coach Brown, Coach Odo, wonderful men, wonderful class acts, great ambassador for North Carolina football. High school football, great men in their communities. And like I said, I've had the opportunity to be around both of them, and just was a pleasure to be around those. And I just wanted to, if anyone in those communities are listening, in Southwest Onslow, we certainly give you our sympathies to those families and those wonderful programs.
Yeah, very well said, Dina. 100%. Terry Grayson chimes in, totally agreeing as well. Thank you for that comment, Terry. Stevie comes in, how's the moving life? And I wanted to kind of segue into just letting you guys know that I will be absent from the show for at least the next 2 weeks. I've been packing things up, and I've been in transit back and forth to my new destination. So I'm not going to be around as much moving forward, but I will be back once we get done. But obviously, ship's in pretty confident hands with Miss King and Mr. Jack here and all the team. And we'll certainly, and I've kind of had this on my mind, Dina, but I know the school year's rapidly coming to an end. I know we've got Tally who's graduating. We've got Brianna who's graduating. I think Chelsea and Jack are going to kind of be taking things from here forward, but we want to make sure that we can maybe have one more little send-off for them and kind of have the whole gang together before these two other young ladies graduate, because it's been a phenomenal year.
Yeah, we got to catch Brianna before she gets hitched and takes off.
I know she's gonna get married and she's gonna be moving on in life.
I said our show with Chris going to Florida, he's gonna really have to do one of his shows where he's got them palm trees in the background.
I might, and I got to be honest, and I don't know exactly what my future in high school sports is going to be. I've got some decision making to make professionally, whether maybe I might coach again. I don't know, but we got to figure out. I don't want to say I'm moving away, because Dina, you've known me long enough to know that I don't think I can completely separate myself from this. But it might be I'm a big NASCAR fan. I might be one of those old drivers that's running a limited schedule, so I don't know.
Well, it was a great show. I'm excited for this upcoming week of football.
Absolutely.
And Saturday's when they're selecting the playoffs.
Yep, Saturday. And I have committed to doing a Saturday selection show for the Charlotte Observer, so I will be doing that Saturday evening. Although I might be doing it with boxes piled up behind me. I'm not sure how I'm going to manage doing it, but we'll figure that out. But yep, selections is Saturday, so we should know the brackets. Most of the games are being played tomorrow. A few of them will be Friday, although I know we have some potential severe weather coming on Friday, but I think that we should be fine to get all the games in before the seeding on Saturday. And guess what? If you don't get it in before then, I just don't think you're going to play it because the state mandates that you've got to get things in by that seeding hour.
And I don't think
Saturday morning.
Back in the fall, everybody would be probably fussing because you're playing. I mean, I've seen games almost every day of the week now. The weather's pretty. You better play it. Let's play on Wednesday. Let's play on Thursday. There's several times that they're not even a full schedule on Friday. Last weekend with the Easter holidays, a lot of them moved their games up to Thursday. So it was crazy to find scores. I just that, and when there's bad weather, I kind of hate it when it's bad weather because we have enough harder time finding the scores anyway, or the correct scores. But then when you have
this year's been tough.
It's crazy.
And then I hate to compound the problem, but not having our team pages up and running have really made it rough as well. We got one more comment before we're going to call it the night. Terry Grayson says, crazy season, different plays, played Shelby, loses 2 in a row. What's the world coming to? Terry, you're absolutely right. You may have missed it. I'm not sure if you heard our conversation about Shelby and that whole region a couple minutes ago, but you're absolutely right. And again, just to kind of reemphasize the absolute brutalness of them top 5 teams in that conference. And man, you take East Gaston and East Rutherford out of that mix, and that is absolutely the most dominant conference, and at least statistically, probably in the state. But anyway, well, guys, that's all I've got. Dina, I always try to give you the final word. Any words of wisdom before we get out of here?
Well, just want to congratulate everybody to seeing the finish line. Week 7, a lot of schools got in their 7 games. I know there's some that didn't, and they did the best they could. So enjoy. Go support your teams Thursday, Friday night, and we will see who gets in the playoffs on Saturday.
Absolutely, and go support the team, and as I like to make sure you spend money at the concession stands. Any opportunity you've got, support those schools, whether financially or otherwise. Do all you can for them because they certainly need your money. But for Dina and Jack and Chelsea and Brianna and Tally who couldn't make it, we appreciate y'all's support. And I want to call it a quits for the night, but y'all have a good night. Take care.
Thank you, everybody.
No way.